It's a parade inside my city, yeah!
No, Ja, I don't think there's gonna be. The way the Memphis Grizzlies are playing right now, there's not gonna be a parade inside that city anytime soon. As we all very well know by this point, Ja Morant was suspended for the first 25 games of the NBA season due to his inability to keep his weapon in his pants. Pause. Like when he took it out on a teenager. Nope. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking. Obviously, Ja Morant is a damn good basketball player. Rookie of the Year, two-time All-Star, even an All-NBA player in 2022. He's a highlight play seeking pogo stick, and it makes sense that the Grizzlies would struggle without their best player. But the Memphis Grizzlies aren't a bad team carried by a star player like the Cavaliers in LeBron's first stint there. They have Jaren Jackson Jr., an All-Star in 2023 and the reigning Defensive Player of the Year. In 2023, he averaged 3 blocks a game in a dominant campaign that also saw him put in 18.5 points per game. They also have Desmond Bane, a budding superstar who averaged 21.5 points per game on 48-41 splits in 2023. He's gotten more comfortable creating his own shot, and he's obviously a deadly three-point shooter. They also have Marcus Smart, the 2022 Defensive Player of the Year. And sure, sometimes he can take some undesired contested threes, but he's an elite on-ball defender, a solid passer, and a capable, albeit streaky scorer. Over the 2022 and 2023 seasons, the Memphis Grizzlies had a 33-17 record, including the playoffs, when Ja Morant wasn't playing. You obviously want him playing, but they've survived fine without him. So why are the Grizzlies 3-10 so far? One of the worst teams in the NBA as of November 21st. Although they did put up a good fight against a really good Celtics team the other night. But why are they struggling even with a fairly easy schedule through 13 games? Well, Desmond Bane has upped his scoring average from 21.5 points to 25.8 points so far in 2024, and doing so on respectable 46-38 splits. Triple J was fantastic on offense and defense for the first 8 games of the season, averaging over 22 points per game, but he's struggled a bit recently, especially with his efficiency. He's down to 43% shooting from the field and 31% from 3. And Marcus Smart has been fine with a 13-5 stat line despite also subpar efficiency. In reality, I think that there are 3 issues that are really causing the Grizzlies' struggles. Number 1 is injuries. Let's start out with the one that requires the least amount of analysis and gives the Grizzlies the most benefit of the doubt. Desmond Bane and Triple J have not missed a game so far this season, but about everyone else has. David Roddy's actually their only other player that's played all 13 games. Salty Aldama missed 6 games at the start of the season, but now the injuries are all piling on at once. Marcus Smart is scheduled to be out for several weeks with a foot sprain, Luke Kennard is set to miss 2 more weeks with a bone bruise, and Xavier Tillman is considered week to week with a knee injury. This is on top of the fact that Steven Adams is out for the season, Brandon Clark is out for the foreseeable future after tearing his Achilles in March, and Ja Morant still has 12 games left on his suspension. Add this all up, that's 6 of the maybe 10 players Taylor Jenkins would have considered his rotation if injuries were off. But even when Marcus Smart, Luke Kennard, Xavier Tillman, even when they were all playing, they were still terrible. Now with Bismack Biyombo and Salty Aldama needing to play 35 minutes consistently, I don't really know how they're going to start winning games. So although these injuries are unfortunate, we have to dig a bit deeper to find out why the Grizzlies are struggling so much. Number 2 is their defense. What honestly surprised me the most watching this team play and then looking at the stats is that they only have a mid-tier defense. This team has the last 2 defensive players of the year, yet they are only 18th in defensive rating at 113.2 and 21st in opponent points per game at 115.9. And this is even an improvement from their first 10 games or so when they were even further down. The first thing I wanted to analyze was the impact of Jaren Jackson Jr. If you look at his stats, you would see he's averaging only 1.6 blocks per game this season as opposed to 3 from last season. That's literally almost half the amount of blocks. But if you look at the Memphis Grizzlies of a team, they actually have allowed the fewest points in the paint per game at just 41.7. Inside of 5 feet, teams are only shooting 57.4%, which is at least 5 percentage points below the NBA average. So Jaren Jackson Jr. is not blocking as many shots, but he is the main deterrent for the best paint defense in the NBA. And his teammates are doing their part there too. As a team, they average 6.3 blocks per game, which is 3rd in the NBA. teams are afraid to take the ball inside, as the Grizzlies concede one of the fewest amounts of inside shots per game. So teams decide to work the Grizzlies from the outside. And that's where the creeks start to show. They have the worst defense in the entire NBA from 20 to 25 feet, the second worst defense from 25 to 29 feet, and obviously the worst three-point defense in the league. It's still a bit of a small sample size, but teams are shooting a ridiculous 48% on corner threes and almost 41% on all other threes. Teams are taking over 37 threes per game against this defense, and so far it's worked flawlessly for them. I remember in the in-season tournament game they lost against the Trailblazers, it felt like every possession the Blazers would just waltz down the court and make a wide open corner three. Jaren Jackson Jr. is kind of like Rudy Gobert on the Jazz in the way that he can't put this defense on his back and support all three levels, the paint, the mid-range, and the three-point areas. Despite the fact they have capable defenders like Desmond Bane and Marcus Smart when he wasn't injured, they just can't stop these three-point attempts, and it's making them one of the worst defenses in the league. And the third thing is just not enough help. I guess it kind of goes with the injuries thing, but there just isn't enough firepower on this team. Desmond Bane is a decent shot creator, you can trust him with the ball, but he's not an every play ball handler and shot creator. Marcus Smart can create his own shot, but you really don't want him doing that unless the offense is really struggling. But besides that, who's creating offense for themselves on this team? Marcus Smart is a fine passer, but there were issues in Boston for years that he was not a natural facilitator, not a natural point guard. Without a natural point guard like Ja, this team has struggled in many ways. First of all, they're 22nd in the NBA, only averaging 24.8 assists per game, which makes sense. It also makes sense that when you can't create good looks, a team will have to take more contested three-point shots. The Grizzlies are just 24th in three-point percentage, despite taking the fourth most three-point shots per game. And finally, when you don't have an elite shot-creating superstar, things get much harder in clutch time, when defenses really start to sharpen up. The Grizzlies only have a 2-6 record in 8 clutch games this season, and have only shot 23.5% from 3 in those situations. I do want to give a shout out to Salty Aldama, who's really stepped up over the last few games. He's played a lot of minutes with the recent injuries, and in his first start against the Celtics, he dropped 28 points, to bring his season average up to almost 15 points per game. But still, there's just not enough help here without a superstar level player like Ja Morant. They are firing on almost no cylinders right now, and I don't foresee them going on any huge run in the next month either. They could really be 10 games under 500 when Ja returns, and the playoffs are just starting to look like a fantasy for this team. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think the Grizzlies can go on a good run and maybe compete for the playoffs once Ja returns? This is the Sports Ball Network, and I'll talk to you guys later.